Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
This is a one-speaker meeting. Please join me in welcoming tonight's speaker, Bob.
Bob, alcoholic.
Bob.
This is always the hardest meeting for me to speak at because I know everybody. It's better to go out of town and, you know. But you know why I come here so much? I've been coming to Marina Center for a long time, and a lot of it so I could watch people, like watching people. So when I got here earlier, Rudy said hi, and you know, to watch Rudy like come in and have a few false starts and a few bounces and then start collecting the chips. That's what keeps me coming back here, because I see that it works. And it reminds me it works for Rudy and it works for me, and good to see a lot of new people here. The meetings are for new people, by the way. Although for somebody that's an old person, I still get a lot from it. I don't know what it is. I still come to meetings, sometimes reluctantly, and I always feel better when I leave, and I can't really describe what transpires. My guess is I'm such an alcoholic that it's so easy for me to get into my isolation and aloneness place. I call it Bob World. And when I come here, like, I kind of have to get out of Bob World for a little while, you know, and get a little relief. So I really like the Marina Center. I feel like I'm with my folks. And like, I don't know, in about 2 months I'll have 30 years of sobriety. And, you know, there's a lot of people in this room with Donna 28, Britton 20, you know, a lot of people have been, there's sobriety in this room. And it's always amazing coming up on 30 years sober and being 60 years old. I never thought any of those two would occur. And I am so respectful of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's saved my life. It's saved the life of the people that matter to me and that I care about. So I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so respectful of it. But a couple months ago, there's this Friday night speaker meeting in Woodland Hills, and the secretary a couple months ago called me up and booked me to speak, and he said, the week that you come, we'll send a letter with directions. So we negotiated the date, and so this was last Friday night. I was supposed to speak there, and I got a letter on Wednesday from the group, a one-page typewritten letter with instructions. One of them, what closed the deal for me was, it says, our group requires men to wear suits and ties. And I said, well, they should have told me that when they first called, because we wouldn't have wasted each other's time. So I just didn't show up. Because that's not my kind of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's good for other folks, but it ain't my kind. I'm not a suit and tie guy, you know? I mean, and so it'd be like, And also, I don't have the kind of ego that says I got so much that's so important to say that I should put on my funeral suit to drive the Woodland Hills on a hot Friday night to hear myself save people. No. So anyways, got that off my chest. So I like the Marina Center. Hey. So I know, again, there are a lot of new people, and this thing works. When I was 9 years old, my mother tried to kill me with a butcher knife. She's still alive. She's been locked up for 51 years now. Fortunately, she will never get out. She will. I'm absolutely convinced Mother Dearest will outlive me, because she's been in that good for 51 years now, in that great institutional life. You know, lights out, meals, you know. And I correspond with her about once a month. And, you know, it's really interesting to try to write a letter to somebody that's been locked up for 51 years. Because what do you say? How was your day? Anything new? I don't know. It's like, then the other one, of course, is Mother's Day. That's the killer for me. This last Mother's Day, last May, I think it was, I really got suicidal because I went over to Rite Aid on Lincoln there and to get a Mother's Day card. And you know what? The Mother's Day cards are kind of mushy. Mushy, you know, it's like thank you for the hot cocoa and the puppies and, you know, mother stuff. And so I'm in there, I'm getting like depressed, you know, and suicidal, like looking at these cards. And so I finally just got a blank card, put some money in it, Happy Mother's Day. I do that for me, you know, because one of the things that I learned in here with my sponsor and going through the steps is a thing about forgiveness. And it's important for me to forgive, so I could have the freedom that comes with that. And also what I learned when I first got sober is Mother Dearest never poured a drink down my throat. You know, I did that all by myself. And so that was when I was 9. I started just really hooked in on something Britton said about, you know, that word about continuing to surrender. And if you're new, don't let that scare you, but that's what it is. You know, coming up on 30 years now, it's more surrender in one right now, you know. So I started drinking when I was 12. I drank alcoholically from the gate. It worked for me. That was that magic. I mean, I was, just took away all the pain. And I loved alcohol. I don't ever remember in my entire life having a social drink. I crossed that line at age 12, the first time I drank. And to drink alcoholically at 12 requires some effort because people, like adults, expect you to do certain things like go to school and do homework and, you know, that kind of stuff, which I didn't have time for because I need to drink. So I left home, and when I was 13 and a half, I moved down to Skid Row, down on the Nickel. Just call it on the Nickel, downtown L.A., and I was the only kid down there. There were no other kids then. Now there are a lot of kids, but I was the only kid, which was great because the winos and the winettes kind of looked after me and made sure I had something to eat. And I really liked Skid Row. I felt safe. They used to have an old hotel down there, and the old Skid Row people know the El Rey Hotel. It's since been bulldozed, but it's a good Skid Row hotel, you know, with little rooms in the bathroom down the hall. And I remember getting one night, I was able to get a room there. I was able to get a room there about twice a month. So I got a room, and it was a hot summer night, and got woken up about 3:30 in the morning by noise coming down from the street. And I looked out the window, and there are two guys stabbing each other over a bottle of wine. And I felt safe and I felt at home. So, there you go. My people. When I was 14, I started mixing heroin with the whiskey, and that combination served me really good because I really went for being numb. I really went for flatlining. I really went about not feeling anything. I mean, my complete goal was not to feel anything. I just didn't want to have a feeling, period. So it's such a contradiction to me that I've had almost 30 years now where it's been about feelings. But I did everything I could to avoid having any feelings. And my drink of choice was Four Roses whiskey from the bottle, like that whiskey. And I'm going for numb. I'm going just before you're flatlined. And that costs money to do that, to live that way. And I eventually, when I was 17, I got arrested and I got tried and convicted as an adult. Turned 18 right after I got arrested. And I say this because, it's kind of, to me, describes my kind of alcoholism. But I got convicted, went to trial, and I got convicted of 46 counts of armed robbery with a sawed-off shotgun. But the important thing I want to say is every one of them was a Vaughn's Market. Because, being alcoholic, the first Vaughn's went so smoothly, So I just did 3 counties worth of Vaughn's Markets, And you know what? They get really upset when you behave that way. The last one ended up in a shootout, and ended up in a running gun battle, and I went into somebody's house, and there were a mother and her child in the living room when I ran into their home, uninvited, and I yelled at them to get out, and there was a attic in half a little attic bedroom upstairs. So I told them, get out. And I ran up the stairs to get a firing position. And, but they were so scared they stayed. So I didn't know I had hostages. So I was wondering, why aren't they charging me? I didn't know I had hostages. So that was a bad experience. Like whenever they have that thing they talk about here, an impending doom up there. Knowing made a bad choice again. There's no way out of this choice. So they sent me to a place on the bay in San Francisco. Appropriate place when you behave like that. And I kind of that was kind of like Skid Row for me too. I didn't mind it. I got the, I had plenty of that old penitentiary Pruno. You drink a couple inches out of a mason jar, that homemade. And it just, you got to use the walls to walk. It just, Rudy knows. All that stuff, boy, it gets you blind. And I'd take whatever else was around. Didn't really have any problems there. I got, the right gang affiliation across my chest and kind of just did the deal. And got paroled, did 6 years. And didn't bother showing up to see the parole officer because why? It's what's the point? So I ran from the gate And, you know, was doing what I do, and that just went on for a few months. And I ran into a guy that knew me from the inside, a guy named Danny Trejo. And Danny, I think he's got 35 years now, Donna, 34, 35, something like that, something ridiculous. But Danny's the one that jumped me into this thing. He took me home, and he'd come to you some years before, and took me home, put me on his couch, and started taking me to meetings. And Danny and I are still very close friends. I kind of miss him because he moved from Venice and out to the valley. And you know, for those of you that don't know Danny, he became a very successful actor, but he gets killed by everybody, you know. De Niro killed him in Heat, and you know, he's always getting killed. But I always give him a hard time because I always say, when are you going to learn how to act? You know, you're always playing like some convict, you know. But anyways, so he was my guy that brought me in, that jumped me into this thing, and put me on his couch, started taking me to meetings. And one of the attractions for me was the laughter coming from Danny. Because Danny wasn't the kind of person that laughed when I knew him in the previous life. You know, he just, and you know, that laughter, and there was like a great energy 30 years ago in AA here, much no different than now, the great energy now, but there were a lot of, they didn't have treatment centers, so people were always putting newcomers on the couch and passing people around in different shifts, and, you know, they'd get assignments, you know, you have him for this amount of time, and, you know, the ritual, they used to, you know, Danny'd take me to the meeting, and somebody else would take me from the meeting to an all-night Denny's, where they'd load you up on hot fudge sundaes and banana splits, you know, get you that sugar. And then when you're just starting to nod off to go to sleep, they whip you back home, and the day starts again the next day. So just a lot of old school AA, you know. There were, I'd say if I went to 7 meetings a week, then 4 meetings there was a convulsion. And Donna remembers those. Remember those convulsion days in AA? And the great thing about it, it never stopped the meeting. Speaker kept speaking, people kept participating. Somebody would just kind of take them over there and help them a little bit, you know. And it's also just odd to see, I don't know why I'm into old AA here, but they didn't have vegetable trays then. You know, they had a lot of donuts and a lot of sugar to give these new people so that, you know, hopefully wouldn't convulse, you know, so it's kind of get that sugar in them, you know, and so it was all good. And I sobered just a couple of months, and Danny introduced me to this guy, and I asked him to be my sponsor, and he said yes, and he was like my main man. He died with 47 years sober, and he's still my main man. Maybe he's not here physically, but he's certainly with me whenever I want him to be with me. And his name was Eddie Cochran, and Eddie was a happy alcoholic, and I'm the angry, depressed type, so it was like a perfect match. Eddie would call me precious. He about 4 months sober. My favorite Eddie story is driving down the street with him on the way to a meeting. I turned down his car radio and I say, Eddie, I need to ask you something, but you got to promise me, Eddie, that you won't say anything to anybody. And he said, sure, kid, what is it? And I said, well, Eddie, it's about sex. Eddie, I don't know if I like boys, girls, dogs, trees. I'm having these feelings I haven't felt before, Eddie. And he looked over at me and said, no thanks, I'm happily married. So that's the way he always dealt with me. He always like took the power out of whatever I was being heavy does it about. And also, he gave me a lot of permission to change, to drop the costume. And maybe seeing Donna, I hadn't seen Donna in a while with her 28 years there, and because like I kind of think like this is the way it's been forever, but it hasn't been this way forever. I mean, Donna remembers when I used to come to meetings with a patch on my back, which sends other people the other side of the room quite often. It's not like, unless you get it, people don't really rush over to welcome you to AA. And God's grace, I was able to retire that patch. And but I look back, at those times when I'd roar up on an AA meeting, on my 47 knucklehead with a suicide jockey with my colors, and hey, how you doing? Anyways, another life. And so Eddie Cochran, took me through the steps. Eddie introduced me to his group, the guys that he ran with, and I started running with them. So if you're new here, get a little posse in here, get a little group of people, whether it's guys or your girl, get a group of girls, get a little posse that you run with, And I was so blessed to come into Eddie Cochran's posse, because they were men, and I always like saying their name whenever I have the privilege of speaking, because when I do, they're still alive. But they're like, this guy Mike Ross and Eddie Regan and Norm Alpy, and these are all the people I went to meetings with every day. I just took them for granted, and they are like part of the legacy of Alcoholics Anonymous now. And they're all gone, but they all went with over 45 years clean and sober, and all did a lot of service. And so I was so fortunate to come in at a time when that's who I was able to run with. That's who my posse was. And I was very fortunate to come into Alcoholics Anonymous before the inner child phase. It came a little later, because I would not be your speaker tonight if, inner child doesn't work for me. If it works for you, that's great, but I don't need to go be 9 years old in the bathtub terrified by my mother. What these men taught me by working the steps and working principles is that I'm not that 9-year-old. They taught me to become who I am, to be a man, not to be in fear. They taught me about forgiveness, taught me about letting go. And they weren't, God, I don't know what I'm into, all this, difference in AA, but, this group of guys I just mentioned weren't known for being really gentle and touchy-feely. This was, kind of old school. Like Mike Ross, I used to go to this big book study on Thursday nights, which Mike was secretary of, and always appointed himself to lead the meeting. He did that for 45 years, right? And I'd always raise my hand, and he'd never call on me. And in every few weeks when I'd raise my hand, he'd say, I don't know why you raise your hand. You have nothing to say. And that would hurt my feelings. Oh, he hurt my feelings. It was that old kind of AA, hey, just listen, kid. And so I had a lot of life, in almost 30 years now. A lot of living, and a A lot of good stuff, a lot of stuff that isn't so good, but that's life. I buried a wife here. I have a daughter who lives up in Washington and a granddaughter. Just, a lot of life stuff. When I first went to meetings, I didn't believe that I could do this thing. That's why I kind of picked my sobriety date as October the 16th and just split the month in half because I wasn't planning on staying. So I wasn't into let's write down the day that you had your last drink, So I just kind of split the month. And here it is, almost 30 years later. It's a good deal. I've been overpaid, been able to travel a lot all over the world many times, which I feel so blessed. Go to meetings wherever I am, go to meetings in, been to meetings in bomb shelters in Tel Aviv and, back rooms in Guatemala and Ecuador, and just all over. I do this thing called Check Me Out. It's not about ego, it's about what Alcoholics Anonymous is allowed me to do. And the only time I ever traveled outside of LA before I came to AA was on a gray bus. So the fact that I could travel all over the world is a major check me out because of AA. So for me, if I'm walking, it's a summer afternoon, it's Barcelona, Spain, I'm walking down the avenues there, stop at a little outdoor cafe to get a cappuccino, and I'm checking it out, and I'm going, flamingo dancers, hey. I'm going check me out, I'm in Barcelona, check me out, I'm in Argentina. I've been the Soviet Union to a meeting, and I came back when it became Russia and went to a meeting. Just really real blessed to have been able to do all the traveling. Probably the greatest gift that I have is the friendships that I have with people in Alcoholics Anonymous. Nasser, Chris, all these wonderful friendships and people that I sponsor. And I have guys that I took to their first meetings that I've sponsored for 26 years, and a couple of them for 24 years, and got a whole group over 15 years, and Kurt, and just, watching that thing happen. There's one guy, Jeff, who was living in the park drinking wine that I took to his first meeting. He asked me to sponsor him, and it's 23 years later, and I'm, his best man at his wedding, godfather to his two sons, Ethan, who's 7, and Spencer, who's 14. Went to his graduation from law school. This is a homeless guy living in the park, Went to his graduation from law school. He's got a great home on the beach in Manhattan Beach. Very successful attorney. And I also get to have my own attorney out of it, so that's not bad. But, and spend most of my Christmases with him and his family because they're my family too. And, it's a pretty good deal for somebody like me, to have that kind of love and that kind of connection to other people. So I just feel really blessed. It's, always good being here. This is, again, such a difficult meeting for me to speak at because I come here all the time and I know everybody, and, it's, but it is what it is. got sick about 6 years ago now, and sold everything and moved on a boat in Marina. Became very zen-like, got rid of all the stuff, which has been so wonderful not to have an attachment to stuff. But now I got to get off the boat because it's where my health's going. And boy, that's been depressing looking for a place to live. I mean, it's just really like, I don't want to live there. I wouldn't want to live here. So, quality problems. And a lot more surrender. There's a lot more surrender going on. And a lot of anger. A lot of, boy, I got some anger. And the anger's more about not being able to do what I want to do right now. So it's very childlike in a lot of ways, and but yet that's what's going on. That's my emotions. That's what I'm feeling. That, good example. I spent a year looking forward to going to Toronto for the AA World. A year before then, I booked my flights in the hotel room. A year before, I'm ready to go, right? Bob is ready to go to Toronto. And due to my travel, a lot of my international travel and back east travel, started talking to a lot of these people on the phone during the year that live in Europe and live on the East Coast. So we all had, we all made plans. So I was also really looking forward to, there's this guy coming in from Moscow who took me to meetings there named Yuri, and I was looking forward to seeing Yuri in Toronto. And so what happened is, on Wednesday morning, I went to the airport, got on the plane, and got off the plane. And it was interesting because it was like harder getting off the plane than getting on the plane. Like why do you want to get off the plane? Did you bring baggage? It was very odd. And saw a few people from this room that were on the same flight, but had to get off the plane, go to the hospital, Sentinel Hospital right there, spend the day there, and not go to Toronto. And that made me really I get angry about that because that's not letting me do what I want to do. I did something good for Bob, though. This is something I did something really good for Bob. Rather than just say, okay, I couldn't go to Toronto, I'll just go to my office and work. That would be a typical Bob choice to make. I just got in the car and I drove up to Santa Barbara for 4 days and relaxed, took walks on the beach and, kind of nurtured myself a little bit. But, that's kind of what's going on with Bob. And for the last few weeks have just been just a lot of reflection. And I know, Britain probably, and anybody that takes a birthday, I think you do some reflection around your birthday time, and so coming up on 30 years, I've been doing some, reflecting, and for whatever reasons, for the last couple of weeks, in a wonderful way, in a way full of joy, I've been really reflecting a lot on the legacies that are left here. The legacies that are left by the Eddie Cochrans, and the legacies by the Mike Rosses, and the legacies left maybe by me whenever it's my time not to be here. And that legacy to me is so powerful because it's about Eddie helped me, somebody helped Eddie, I was able to help Jeff. Jeff's able to sponsor guys and help them. The guys he sponsors able to sponsor people. And it's this kind of unbroken chain of this very powerful legacy. And I've just been really like moved by that. I remember this guy Marv I sponsored, and he died right at the week of his 25th year sober anniversary. And Marv was quite a character. He got buried in what's that crazy cemetery in Hollywood with a funny name, where they do movies on Saturday nights during the summer? Forever? Hollywood Forever. Yeah, so he's such a Hollywood guy. Like, Hollywood Forever was a perfect cemetery for him. And at his funeral, they did, it was one of those wonderful AA funerals, hundreds of people. And the way we left it, the only people that could speak at his funeral was people that he sponsored. It was just so powerful. But a few weeks before that, I was at a meeting in Culver City with Marv. And this Friday night meeting that has tables and round tables. And it's nothing we planned on. But, about halfway through the meeting at the coffee break, Marv told me what was going on at the table. And they were all these generations of the legacy. They're me, who sponsored Marv, who had guys he sponsored, he's sponsored, and it went 12 deep at that table. I mean, it was like powerful stuff, everybody kind of just passing it on. And so I just been, again, really reflecting and really having such a deep appreciation for the people that came before me, the Eddie Cochrans and Mike Rosses and Norm Alpes and those people that made it okay for me to have a seat here and stay here, and made it okay for me to start realizing that I was lovable and that I was capable of loving another human being. So anyways, have a good evening. Thanks.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control is connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst and one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. That shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.